This is Ms. Tolman again. We are now in our Unit 4. We are now on Lesson 2, Greek city-states. We do have quite a bit of vocabulary right up here, so it's a good idea that you take notes. Taking notes is a good thing. All right, so our vocabulary starts with aristocrat. It's a person who belongs to a privileged class with a special rank. Democracy, which is government by the people or those that they elect to represent them. A helot, which is a person who lived in a Greek city-state without full citizenship. Monarchy, which is a form of government in which there is one ruler at the head of the state. Oligarchy, which is a government by an elite few. And a tyrant. In early Greece, a person who ruled with great power. All right, so the end of the Dark Age is marked by the re-emergence of large cities on the Aegean Peninsula. Many of the cities were constructed in a similar manner to the earlier Mycenaean cities. Ooh, say that 10 times fast. One important similarity was the construction of the center of the city. As with the Mycenaeans, it was built on a high hill. The Greeks called the center of the city the Acropolis. Acro means high, and polis means city. The majority of the population of the city, or polis, lived on the hillside or surrounding lowlands. The polis was the main political unit of Greece after the Dark Age. From polis, we get the word politics. Like city-states of ancient Sumer, the polis was independent. There was no nation of Greece at this time. There were just separate polis, which is the plural of polis. The polis were not unified under a single ruler or ruling body. Now, we are going to talk about the evolution of government. Now, most city-states began as monarchies. So a monarchy is a form of government in which there's one ruler, known as the monarch. The monarch had absolute control over the government. The monarchs of the Greek city-states were usually a powerful landowner. The position of monarch might be passed down from father to son. However, landowners often competed for control of the polis by waging war against the monarch. Eventually, the landowners formed alliances and worked together to form a council of rulers. Council members were not elected. They were granted position based on their wealth and the power in the polis. Government by a select group is known as an oligarchy. Oligarchies do not allow members of the lower class to participate in the government. Laws and executive decisions are made by a select member of the upper class, usually for the benefit of the upper class. In some of the city-states, oligarchy, or rule by few, was very unpopular. This is especially true in places with a strong middle class. Despite how wealthy or powerful a member of the middle class had become, they could not join the ruling councils. The council members were aristocrats, elected by fellow aristocratic members of the aristocracy, inherited by their social rank. They were considered an aristocrat or noble simply because their parents were aristocrats. As a result of aristocratic domination, the lower classes revolted. They supported leaders that promised them greater rights and freedoms. Popular leaders that took over the government of a city-state by force were known as tyrants. Today, tyrants are considered cruel and oppressive. This was not the case in ancient Greece. Tyrants were called such because they gained control in disobedience to the laws of the city-state. Most tyrannies did not last long. However, the spirit that gave rise to them did. As popular leaders, tyrants governed the power and the choice of the people. In other words, they could rule because the majority of the people wanted them to. The spirit of popular rule developed in some city-states into a form of government known as democracy. Now, democracy by definition is rule by the people. There were many powerful city-states in ancient Greece, but not all were allowed to govern in the same way. Some were never ruled by democracy. The most powerful city-states were Sparta and Athens. As we see, they had very different forms of government. And we are going to start with Sparta. Sparta was unique among the Greek city-states. As the story below indicates, Spartan citizens were people of action and honor. Native Spartans were taught from birth to submit to the interests of the state. To give oneself for the common good was an essential part of Spartan life and government. So our story is an elderly man was trying to find a place to sit and observe the Olympic Games. As he went to each section, All the other Greeks laughed as he tried to make his way through. Some ignored him. Upon entering the Spartan section, all of the Spartans stood and offered the elderly man their seats. Suddenly, the entire stadium applauded. All the Greeks knew what was the right thing to do, but the Spartans were the only ones that did it. All right, now we begin to talk about the Spartan government. So the Spartans traced their ancestors to Hercules, a legendary hero of the Trojan War. Hercules was everything the Spartans wanted to be. They were warriors, and as warriors, they expanded their control and influence by means of military power. Working from their strategic location in the south of the Peloponnesus, the Spartans conquered the Laconians and the Messenians. As captives, the Laconians and the Messenians were treated as helots. Helots were not slaves. However, they had no political rights and were expected to give half of their harvest to their Spartan masters. In order to advance Sparta further, many reforms took place. Namely, a military state was instituted. Almost every aspect of the citizen's life was directed by the government. For example, males could be punished if they allowed their hair or beard to grow any longer than it was allowed. At the head of the government were 2 kings and 5 ephors. The king did not have absolute control. Aristotle said they were a kind of unlimited and perpetual generalship. As the top generals of the Spartan army, the kings also fulfilled a certain spiritual duties. Before battles, they offered sacrifices to the gods. In some instances, the ephors were more powerful than the kings. However, as selected officials, they were only allowed to serve for 1 year. Ephors oversaw the enforcement of laws and acted as judges. The Spartan government also included the Gerousia. It was made up of 28 male aristocrats that were elected for life. As a legislative body, the Gerousia functioned like a senate, drafting laws for the state. The Apella was a popular assembly of Spartans. Any Spartan male over 30 years of age who had served in the military could vote at its meetings. It was to the Apella that the Gerousia submitted their laws for approval. As can be seen, Spartan's government was mixed. Though it had kings, it was not a monarchy, and though it had 2 elite bodies of rulers, the ephors and the Gerousia, it was not an oligarchy. It was not a democracy, though its laws had to be approved by its citizens. Now we get into Spartan society. Not all persons born in Sparta were considered Spartans. A person had to prove his or her worthiness. At age 7, the boys began a rigorous education known as the Agoi. The Agoi was structured to produce warriors that were physically and morally strong. Spartan warriors were considered the walls that protected and served Sparta. The Agoi required the boys to live away from home in military barracks. In the barracks, they slept together on rough grass reeds and shared meals at a mess hall. The boys were given only a cloak to wear and were allowed to bathe only on special occasions. The harsh living conditions were meant to bond the boys together and prepare them for the difficulty and pain of battle. Much of the training was physical. This included combat exercises, hunting, and dancing. The boys also underwent a spiritual and social training under the mentorship of an older Spartan man. At age 20, successful males entered the military service. At age 30, they were allowed full rights as Spartan citizens and allowed to live at home with their families. Males who could not endure the military training or failed to meet the standards of their superior officers were barred from full Spartan citizenship. They were considered middle class. Spartan warriors served in the military until they were 60 years old. Now, the daughters of the native Spartans were taught combat tactics and underwent rigorous physical training. The women of Sparta were to be the second line of defense, if needed. Their difficulty training also meant they had to prepare them for motherhood. Spartans believed that strong mothers produced strong warriors. If the girls were successful in their training, they were married to a Spartan warrior. If they failed, they were to return home and live the life of a helot or middle-class housewife. A housewife spent her time sewing, farming, cooking, and raising children. Spartan females were also allowed an unusual amount of freedom for ancient times. Most husbands preferred to live with their fellow warriors in the barracks. This left their wives to govern and even protect the home. The influence of the Spartan mother had a lasting effect on their desires and values. Before his son went off to war, his mother presented him with a shield and said, "Itan I epitas," with it or on it. The custom implied return victorious or return dead. Victory or death was the only means of honor and respect for the Spartan. To surrender or desert was an unforgivable offense. Now we get to our questions. So these are match the terms with the definitions. So we go ahead and click on our drop-down menu right here, and it gives us the words that we are to fill in. Okay? They are up there, or if you've written them down in your notes, you can just glance down and find them. All right. Number 2. The center of a city was called. Number 3. This is true or false. The Greek city-states had a unified government. Number 4. Who formed an oligarchy? Number 5. How did a person become a member of the aristocracy? Number 6. What was the name given to someone who took over a city-state by leading a popular revolt? Number 7. This is a select all that apply, so there will be more than one answer. The leading city-states of ancient Greece were. Number 8. Who was considered a Spartan? Number 9. This is a select all that apply, a part of the Spartan government, so there will be more than one answer here. Number 10. What was the Gerousia? Number 11. What was the name of the training that boys were given in Sparta? And number 12. At what age did Spartans end their military service? So again, scroll up for the answers if you need a little bit of review. Have a wonderful rest of your day. You're doing an amazing job, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.